there, everybody, and welcome to another Forks Friday Live. So happy that you are tuning in. We are very happy to be here. I have a couple of special guests that I am very excited to introduce to you. Of course, I'm Stephen, your customer success manager at Forks Over Knives, and we're all familiar with the general tenet: give a person a fish, feed them for a day; teach a person how to fish, feed them for a lifetime. Now, at Forks Over Knives, we don't really talk about fish over there for consumption, but we do talk a lot about fruits and veggies. Give a person a fruit or veggie, feed them for a day; teach a person to garden, feed a person for a lifetime. And that is what we're going to talk about today. We have Denise Beins, the Chief Operating Officer, and Stacey Murphy, the Master Garden Instructor from GrowYourVegetables.org. Welcome to this Forks Friday Live, Denise and Stacey.
Thank you so much.
We are so excited to talk about this. Obviously, amongst the many different food groups that are prominent in the whole food plant-based diet that are throughout all the recipes in Forks Over Knives that we are always sharing information about, when it comes to what we are growing, all of the produce that we are consuming, it's a very important topic. And I imagine that a lot of people around here might actually be shopping at markets and stores and other things for most of their produce. And the questions of where does this come from and how can I do it myself might not always come into play. So I would love to hear a little bit more about GrowYourVegetables.org and maybe your stories of how you got into gardening to show that anyone can really do this.
So I'll let you go first, Stacey.
Awesome. Yeah. So, my journey is interesting. I grew up in my mom's garden, and I grew up among the peas, picking peas off the plants and eating them directly. And so I knew how fun it was to be outside and to just pull something off a plant and enjoy that flavor and enjoy the delight of knowing that it just came right off the plant. But it took me a little while. So when I went off to college and I went into engineering and architecture, kind of got away from all that gardening stuff and lost sight of fresh food for a little while. And when I was in Brooklyn, I was going to the farmer's market every day, talking to all the farmers, enjoying all the vegetables, all the herbs. And one day I was like, I have to grow something. I just it overcame me, like a desire to actually do this myself, because I remembered what it was like as a child, being able to just pick it and eat it, and the amazingness of that, knowing that it came from our life. And so I started with 2 trays indoors. I had a tiny studio apartment. I had grow lamps. I had 2 trays that were about this big, and I grew all my salad for the winter. And then the process was, I really wanted a backyard. So I basically borrowed somebody's backyard. That was my first garden. I wandered around the farmer's market with signs that said, hey, do you have a yard? Can I farm it? And basically offered to share the produce with them. So that's how I got back into growing food. And it was mind blowing. The delight of knowing exactly where everything's coming from, choosing the exact variety of the thing you want. How many types of basil plants are there? If you're an Italian, you want the basil that you love, right? Not the one that's at the grocery store. And so picking what you want and knowing where it came from and the way it was grown, the love that you poured in it, the relationship you have with that plant, it just tastes like the best food in the world. So I was hooked right away.
I can definitely attest from that, especially from trying foods from friends' gardens. I can still say to this day, the most delicious, potent, and spicy mustard greens that I've ever tasted were fresh from the garden. They popped in my mouth and enlightened my taste buds more so than any other ones that I've ever bought, purchased, and consumed before. And Stacey, I love that story. I know on the website, which is GrowYourVegetables.org, there is a bit more of the story, the carrot that saved your life, I do believe, which is exciting. Denise, can you share a bit more about your journey? I think gardening was a bit more in your genes growing up, yes?
Yeah, my fond memories of going over to my grandparents when I was growing up and helping pick strawberries, helping in the garden, sitting on the back porch, snapping peas, and just so many fond memories. And I grew up with that example of eating fresh, eating fresh out of the garden. And so that, yeah, it goes back to, I think it's in my DNA. So, but then a few years ago, like Stacey, I kind of got away from it too, and all the busyness of life. And then a few years ago, our son decided he was all into gardening, and he was about 19 or 20 at the time. And he decided he wanted to take out our whole backyard and make it into an edible garden. And we're like, okay. So we're like, there's a lot worse things a 19 or 20-year-old could be doing.
Yeah.
So sure. We can always put grass back, but
Yeah.
we didn't. And it's thriving, and it's been a really fun journey. So he moved on and left all of this for us to take care of.
Amazing rewards to reap, of course, from what is sown. Welcome to everyone who is here. If you are just joining, we are with Denise and Stacey from growyourvegetables.org. Please let us know where you are from, and also let us know, do you garden? Are you interested in gardening? If you're here, I'm guessing the answer is yes. And if you have any questions specifically about gardening, produce, how to get started, we might answer it, but feel free to share it in the comments and we will get around to it. Stacey and Denise, with these stories of what brought you into gardening, we'd love to hear a bit more about the impetus and the inspiration to start growyourvegetables.org.
I'll let Stacey talk about that one.
It looks beautiful over there. We may have had a freeze from Stacey. Denise, are you okay taking that one?
Sure. So Stacey started Grow Your Own Vegetables, I believe, in about 2017.
Okay.
And so she's an amazing instructor. And so just definitely head over. We've got a YouTube channel as well with tons of videos with Stacey, and so she spearheaded this whole operation, and then I stepped in with her and started working with her in 2020.
Okay.
Which 2020 was a big year for gardening. A lot of people were like at home, what do we do?
Yeah.
And so I stepped in and started working with her and kind of have taken on the operations here.
That is fantastic. 2020, obviously a revolutionary year for so many different reasons. Bringing all of us inside at home for a period of time, a long period of time, I'm sure gave these extra, I'll say pun intended because it's in my head, but a seed of this new idea. What can I do within the confines of my own home?
Right.
And for anyone who has gardened or does discover gardening, I hope you find it very awesome. Hello again, Stacey. That's how the technology goes, but we're getting back to the earth with the conversation, so it balances out. In the midst of this awesome practice, one of the main tenets that you share on your website is the circle of awesome. Can you share why it is so awesome and what it includes?
Sure. So the circle of awesome is about, so in nature, everything's connected, right? And so oftentimes when you go outside, you realize that, oh, the soil is connected to the water, is connected to the sunlight, is connected to the plants. And so the circle of awesome is about taking each piece in the order of what would be the most impact to learn about, and to basically investigate, okay, what does my climate look like? That's the first step of the circle of awesome. And you're really just observing what's going on where I live. What is the temperature like? What is the microclimate like? What's the wind like? All these different factors. And then you move into the soil. You say, okay, what is my soil like? And how can I improve that? And then you look into the compost in terms of how can I improve my soil? You move into water, you move into plants. And so notice how plants come a little bit later in the cycle. And then you actually move into, how do I enjoy my time in the garden? You really look at yourself too in this process. And then you go through a little bit more around, how do you cultivate the plants? How do you harvest the plants? And then you finish up with a whole process of kind of looping back around. And so the circle of awesome is about understanding that it's a whole web of life that you're going to be engaging with. And if you were to try to do it all at once, it would be overwhelming. But if you take it bite by bite by bite, and you just each week you say, okay, I'm gonna learn something new about my climate. And then the next week, I'm gonna learn something new about my soil. And every week you just keep going around. At some point, you'll master all of it. But if you were to try to jump into all of it all at once, then you would just be way overwhelmed and you'd probably give up. So we call it the circle of awesome because it just keeps getting better and better. Every time you go around, you learn something new.
I love that so much. We definitely share a lot about progress, not perfection. Those baby steps add up into larger leaps over time. And to have something that has a circular trajectory, it sounds like each step you take, the next one almost gets easier and easier because you have everything else that you've built behind you.
Exactly.
Oh, that's wonderful. For everyone sharing in here, we have Kay Rice, who grows almost 90% of their used vegetables and fruits and mushrooms on their homestead. That is fantastic. Kay, I know that you are a Forks Meal Planner member also, so I'm sure all of those delicious fruits, veggies, and mushrooms are going right to those right to the meals. That's wonderful. We do have, I'll pop in. Anyone who has questions, we'll approach them at the end, but we have one right over here because we're talking about the land. But what about people who perhaps live in the city? Victoria Mulligan lives in a small apartment right now. She has a terrace. How could she specifically start, or anyone who might not specifically have that wonderful land space?
Sure. So remember that I got started in a studio in Brooklyn. And so I got started with 2 indoor trays under some grow lamps. I grew my salads. So I grew lettuces, I grew herbs like basil to add to my salads, dill. And so basically those trays had arugula and mustard greens and all different types of lettuce. So it was like my specific lettuce blend. And I grew enough salad to have a salad, pretty much a small salad every day. I just kept recycling those, like planting more every 2 weeks. So if you have a terrace, you're in good shape because you might get a little bit of sunlight. So plants really need that sun. I mean, they really want 6 to 8 hours of sunlight for vegetables and herbs. Your lettuces and greens can get a little bit less than that. They can get 4 hours of sun and still thrive. And so if you have a terrace, you could just set up a little box. And what I would recommend is salad greens. And you can mix in there interesting things like celery. It might not get very big, but it's going to add a lot of punch to your salad. So celery, mustard greens. If you can find sorrel, it's kind of like a lemony green. So you end up having like all the different flavored of greens, and then put in a couple of your favorite herbs and just start there. It's really awesome to start small because then you can just watch the trajectory. And the beautiful thing about lettuce greens and salad greens is that after 2 weeks, you're going to probably be planting more. So your learning cycle is pretty quick and you're like, oh, that worked. Oh, that didn't work. Okay, let's try something else. So a small space is really good for that, I think.
Now, all of this information, what's great is, of course, growyourownvegetables.org is a fantastic, but we also have, if you didn't hear that, growyourownvegetables.org. We have a wonderful offer that we want to put out to everyone here, a wonderful event that's coming up. It is the Superfood Garden Summit coming up on May 14th to May 17th, where I imagine all of this information we're talking about now, plus a whole lot more, is in store for all of you. All you have to do is type the word summit in the comments. We will send you the link to sign up for this amazing Superfood Garden Summit coming up. Denise, can you share a bit more about what we can expect when we attend the summit?
The 14th to 17th. And so we have 12 speakers, expert growers, starting off with Stacey Murphy, and she's going to be talking about bioenergetics. So I don't know if she might have a minute to talk about what in the world that is, but we have Ocean Robbins. He's going to be talking about berries and leafy greens. We have Charles Dowding, No Dig Gardening. Saja Popham is talking about the Garden of Immunity. We have Cami McBride on healing with garden sage. Amy Landers is going to be talking about superfoods for butterflies and our lovely pollinators. And Matt Powers and regenerative soil. Jason Matthias, he is a homesteader and gardener, and he sells seeds, and he's going to be on talking about gardening and homesteading with children. He has 6, I believe, children. And we have Greg Peterson talking about seed saving and wild seeds. And Michael Kilpatrick, Backyard Fruit Essentials, talking about elderberries and blueberries and all kinds of fun berries to grow. We have growing your own chocolate, and we also talking about beneficials for your soil with Crystal from our team. So yeah, all kinds of goodness.
That sounds absolutely fantastic. And all that you wonderful viewers need to do is just type the word summit in the comments, and we will send you the link. You can find out more about the Superfood Garden Summit and attend it in the days ahead. All of these, this wonderful information that you shared really paints this picture of a lifestyle of healthy habits, right? It comes from what we are actually consuming, and then as we backtrack, it is us putting our full love and care into growing it from the earth directly into our bodies, and the joy of being a full part of that process, which is absolutely amazing. For those people who are just getting started and might be looking into gardening but still have their normal shopping practices, do you have any specific advice or recommendations for familiarizing with purchasing produce, certain items to look out for to make sure they are getting the best fruits and veggies that they can get?
Yeah. I'll let you go, Stacey.
So the question was around purchasing produce at the store. That's what. Yeah. Is that what I heard?
Yeah. Yeah. And how to know what to pick and how to select.
Yeah. I mean, when I go to the grocery store, I have a couple things in mind, because I'm coming from a farming perspective, which is maybe a little bit different than other people. When you go, I'm guessing when you go, you can kind of sense the vitality of that produce. Like, I'm guessing if you walk into a store and you're going to go buy some kale, that there's going to be bunches of kale that look wilted, and there's going to be other ones that look nice and plump and juicy and firm. And so, when I go to the grocery store, I'm always looking for what looks really vital, what looks like it's just chock full of nutrients, and you'll notice, like you'll know the difference, and you'll see, like with the carrots too. When you go to find a carrot, you pick it up, and when they're like, they've been a little bit old and they've been around the block a little while, they got kind of soggy, right? They get kind of, so you kind of, when you're at the store, you can sense what has the most vitality in it. But here's the thing. When I go to the grocery store, I'm also looking from the perspective of whole systems. And sometimes I'll look and I'll say, well, those things don't look the best, but they need to get eaten, like kind of like the stuff that's at the bottom of your refrigerator. So I'm that person that sometimes will take what doesn't always look the best at the grocery store, and I might actually make that into soup, or cook it down into soup stock and things like that. So I do both. Sometimes I go into the grocery store and I want to see what looks the most vibrant, what looks the most juicy, what looks the most alive. And then other times I'm like, I'm going to take this produce off the shelf that's just going to end up going to waste somewhere, and I'm going to bring it home and I'm just going to cook it up into a big soup pot. So you kind of got to go what feels good in your gut. I believe that we're truly connected to these plants and that they're talking to us all the time. And that's really what bioenergetics is all about, is that if you feel called to a plant, if you feel called to grow a plant, if you feel called to eat a plant, that just means that your body, there's something about your body and that plant that's talking to each other. And I would trust that.
That is wonderful. There's a lot of trust over here. Hopefully I am coming in clear, both visually and audibly, to everyone. But Stacey and Denise, you're the ones with the wonderful information here. So if I go, everyone, you are still in amazing hands that have been in the soil growing these delicious, delicious fruits, vegetables, and other foods that, of course, you will find all over Forks Over Knives, Forks Meal Planner, everywhere. These are the foods that are in the recipes. We do have some extra questions from Cynthia. Do my tomatoes have a chance to grow this season? I'm in Houston, Texas, and was told April was too late to plant them.
So there's interesting things about climates and plants and rule of thumbs. What's interesting is that anything can work, but you have to understand a little bit more about why they're saying it won't work. So it's possible that the temperatures might get too hot in Houston, and what that will do to the tomatoes in the moment when plants are very like us. They go through cycles. Women, we go through first puberty and then later menopause, right? And so plants are kind of like this too, and especially tomato plants, where If they're pollinating at the peak hot season of like the heat of the day, what happens is it's too hot and the cells kind of erupt. This is a lot of detail that you don't need to remember. But what will happen is that the tomato plant won't pollinate when it's that hot. And so if you get it in the ground sooner, it's already pollinated and growing tomatoes. And then you're just in the heat, everything's good, you're good to go. But I also would like to invite you to really talk to your plants, see what they need, because you could put shade cloth over them or something to reduce that heat. And ask around, is there any options? Are there tomatoes that are grown in hotter climates? Because there are, I think we have a whole tomato sheet in our courses, which is all about which tomatoes are right for which climate. And so there might be a different tomato that's from a different climate that might actually work. So I always think it's worth a try, right?
We have another question about finding organic turmeric. Any thoughts or ideas about that? Right now, the Zimini can only find it at Sprouts.
Yeah, that's a great one. Turmeric is it's a tropical plant. And I actually work with a farm in Costa Rica that grows turmeric, and then they basically sell it as a powder to the United States market. So it's always easier to get the powders, right, than the fresh. You can grow turmeric where you are, but you just have to know that it's a tropical plant. And so you have to give it that kind of condition. So I've found it at Sprouts. I found it at local co-ops. It's one of those hit or miss plants at the grocery store, I have to say.
Okay. Well, we've covered a lot of information here. We did talk. I see we have a couple more questions also regarding growing on balconies or in an apartment building, which I know that we covered a little bit. What's great about these lives is you can watch them again on the Forks Over Knives Facebook page or YouTube page. So please do tap back in, rewatch. A lot of great information here. Are there any maybe final tips for someone who's just starting out? One big tip that you'd say, if you're going to start anywhere, this is a wonderful gift.
I would say just do it. Here's the thing. I'm guessing everybody here has probably killed a houseplant in their life. And a lot of people, the reason why they don't necessarily start a garden is that they get nervous about what it's going to look like. Am I going to kill things? How's that going to feel about, like, am I going to put in all this work? And then is it going to work? Am I going to get to eat the plants? And I just say, put all that aside and just really go do it and follow people like us who've been on the path to make it easy and simple.
That's fantastic. Denise, any special tips that you have to share?
I would just say, don't take it too serious. Enjoy the journey. And I think, part of the benefit is the vegetables and fruit that you get, but there's a whole other experience that you get from gardening. So just enjoy it.
It is a full lifestyle, and you can learn so much more about how to get into it and beyond at the Superfood Garden Summit. Please type the word summit into the comments. We'll send you a link to it, and we are excited for you to attend it. Okay, the final big question. What is your current favorite food to garden? Whether it could be the putting in or it could be the taking out and enjoying. Please share any that are at the top of your list right now.
Oh my gosh. Mine are always the same every time. So celery is one of the most underrated vegetables on the planet.
Agreed.
It has so many health benefits. And when you grow celery in your own garden, it has the most incredible flavor. The celery at the grocery store is watered down. And there's so many different varieties of celery. It grows so fast. You can basically cut it and put it in salads and in your smoothies. It's wonderful to grow at home. So that's always number one on my list. It's underrated. Second one is here in California, we have a perennial basil plant. So most basil plants, they grow, they seed, they die. And so you have to keep planting basil all the time. And then I discovered this African blue basil here in California. And I have a plant that is about 10 years old, and it's thousands of dollars worth of basil. And it's the most fragrant, pungent basil. It's delicious. So I have these 2 plants that are just my favorites always.
I love it. Denise, what
Yeah.
tops your list?
All right. I love the basil, but I've got to go with the berries. I was out yesterday admiring. I've got blueberries and strawberries and raspberries and thimbleberries and salmon berries. I've got all these berries coming on right now. So there's nothing like just picking it off the plant and eating it fresh.
Nothing like it. I have one of my own right over
You have a
here.
prop.
Never leave home or be in my home without one. And we had Dr. Neil Barnard on just last week talking about the humble blueberry and how healthful it is. Stacey, Denise, thank you so much for joining, for sharing your love, for sharing your care and imparting that inspiration on so many others. Of course, you can learn more and dive into your beautiful gardening lifestyle with the Superfood Garden Summit coming up in just a few days. Comment Summit below. We'll send you the info. And we are wishing everyone a celery and berry-tastic rest of their Fridays. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.